Hello, everybody, and welcome to a quick overview of blogging and writing for the web. And this overview of the chapter is going to be very, very persuasive, I should say. I have done videos providing an overview of this chapter in the past, and they have typically been a general, typical lecture video that goes through the different slides and the different elements of this chapter. But this video, which will be a little bit shorter, is going to dive into the idea that blogging is somehow not important or overrated. Or I think I've seen some people recently talking about how it's not really, it's kind of past its prime and outdated even. And I do not believe that that is really true. I've studied the idea, the concept, the business of blogging here over the past several years. And there's a lot of people that make a lot of money blogging. And there are a lot of people that derive a lot of value as a customer of a blog. So that's really what this is going to be about. We will go through some key terms, of course, but I do want to make this more of a persuasive argument and not just strictly educational. But first, I think we do need to outline what exactly is a blog. A lot of times, the younger audiences will look at blogs, and actually older audiences will too, as kind of an outdated term, which I can understand. It was really, I mean, this is a term that started in the 1990s, and it was just people posting their daily musings online. And actually, the original idea of a blog was this weird list of links. And there is I was able to grab a screenshot from one of the original blogs that online when I was researching this textbook. But it would just be a list of links, and that's not what it is anymore. If I'm looking at what a blog is or what a blog isn't, it's really just the consistent development of written content on the web. It's not, it doesn't fall into a specific topic. And honestly, while there is a difference between blogging and, say, news and journalism, those have started to blend together. If you go to your favorite, your sports website or a sports blog, I suppose, that is where things start to blend, where there is opinion and it is one person or two people or a group of people that are not just reporting on the news, but they are providing another perspective, essentially like the opinion piece of the opinion section, the op-eds that you would see in newspapers. That's what blogging is. But at the same time, they also are informational, they're educational. There's a lot of different things that blogs can do. When I look at what a blog is, a lot of companies in the business world don't really do it correctly. A lot of them just have blogs to exist as a way to post news, press releases, or they try this lifestyle content marketing brand that just falls flat. When in reality, if you think about digital marketing as a way to, as we've talked about, in the past, if digital marketing is the idea of using the internet and using digital means to build a business, blogging is one of the cornerstones of that definition. And it does start with search engine optimization and the ability to bring in traffic organically, inbound marketing. But there's a lot more that goes into it than that. So, there are different elements of the blog, but before we get into this, I just want to share some statistics that I found. These are not in the textbook. These are not in the chapter. I just want to share these myself. First off, the blogging industry or market, I guess you could call it, I mean, it's pretty saturated. There's 500 million blogs out there. And just so you know, there are less than 2 billion websites. So you're looking at more than a quarter of all websites have a blog or are a blog. However, fun fact is that 93% of marketing managers or marketing, marketing decision makers have blogging as part of their content marketing strategy. This is new data that has come out recently, and I myself was kind of shocked that number was so high. 93% of marketing managers have blogging as part of the content marketing strategy. Whether it is successful or not, that remains to be seen. A lot of marketing people don't use blogging correctly. We're not going to go into too much detail on that, but a couple other numbers I wanted to share is that blogging as an industry itself is going to be it's over $400 billion. And what that means is, what is it worth? Like if I were to start a blog today and successfully build it up using the principles that I've learned throughout this chapter and all the other chapters and these textbooks, what could I get out of it? And earlier this year, there was a report done, content marketing and blogging are often intertwined in terms of definitions. But when I look at kind of like, what about just blogging? If you just use blogs, it's hard, again, they're hard to separate. I often combine them together. But from what I've found this from a couple of different websites, the average blogger, if you were just to blog and you build up an audience and a community and you're creating content consistently, the average blogger earns about $45,000 per year. If you're just starting, it can lead to about $500 to $2,000 a month. And then you can increase that revenue from there. Only about 13% of bloggers actually make a living out of blogging. But, a quarter of them, about 25%, are making it into meaningful side hustle income. And there's a lot of different blog industries, or I should say niches out there. There's the idea of, there's the old recipe blogging. There's all sorts of different tech industry blogs out there. And probably the most popular one of all time, maybe not of all time, the most, I will say the most lucrative one from a business standpoint so far is probably NerdWallet, which was also started as a blog that provided financial advice, resources, and recommendations for website visitors. And NerdWallet is a great example because it was just a couple of people many, many years ago building content. I believe it started as an affiliate website, and it still is largely that. But today, NerdWallet is, I believe that they were either filing for an IPO or they were considering it recently, where you have a blog that is turned into a massive business. And that is not rare. That is not uncommon. Blogs can turn into major companies. And it's not something that happens overnight, but it's pretty, it's something that's worth considering. If you look at, if there was another survey taken recently of bloggers, I think this was Blogging Wizard that did this. They asked a bunch of bloggers, hey, is your website successful? And about, they ranged from 60 to 75% of bloggers said that their blog was successful. And they considered it a success based on either monetary gain or other marketing goals. However, I can see where, the negativity sets in because about 90% of new blogs fail each year. There's a lot of different reasons for that. And yes, the blogging market is saturated with so many out there. But if you know what you're doing, if you understand your audience, your niche, and you have and you can create content pretty well, it can turn into something pretty strong. The other thing that I want to address is the fact that the idea of content creation, people that use TikTok, Instagram, any social network to essentially become an influencer of some sort, that is just blogging on the video side. The difference is that there is more visual elements to it. It can appear more authentic because it's a person actually in front of you instead of you reading words. And it can be a little bit more nuanced, the video side, because there's a lot more going on. It's not just, you're not just writing something, you're essentially producing video. And that's not to put down the idea of influencers or content creation at all. But if you think about it, the end goal is the same. You're creating content online for a niche audience for some purpose, to either grow a business, to grow your brand, to grow something. And that's kind of the definition of blogging. The only difference is the medium and the way that it happens. Now, not a lot of people read stuff online. I've heard that as well. Sure. That's true. However, the amount of time that people are spending on websites that aren't social networks are largely spent reading things, or at least consuming content that is a combination of the written word, but also the visual and the video as well. Now, if you think about the ways that websites generate traffic or generate customers, or I should say keep customers, they drive traffic, right? They're looking for conversions, designated actions, but then they also want to maximize the revenue per conversion. So, they want to make the most out of these people. They want to optimize the traffic. Blogs do this more than any typical web page, with the exception of, if you're not talking e-commerce, if you're talking about a traditional website, blog content is going to hit your goals for your website more so than just a couple of pillar pages. An about page, a contact us page, a menu, or whatever page that you're looking at. Those are all well and good, and they're good at describing what the website's about. But when you're looking to drive an action, a conversion, that's where the blogs come in handy. We're going to skip a couple of these slides. There's a lot of blog elements that are important, right? You have the call to action. If your blog's going to be successful, you need a call to action. You need to have the visitor doing something. A button like this, I think they pulled this from HubSpot, is a great example. If there's a clear, concise, colorful verb here, like download now, which you probably think is pretty standard these days, but there was a day when that wasn't. That's how you can, really take a call to action and take a website visitor and turn it into something meaningful. But if you think about blogging too, as a general definition, there's all sorts of ways that you can get revenue now from a blog. And I put a lot of journalistic sites here. You'll see The Athletic, ESPN, USA Today. Those are all news sites, but they're still blogs in the sense that there's a lot of content there that is written from the blogging side. That is, they fit the definition of blogging from earlier in the slides. But there's so many ways that you can build a business through blogging. It's just really about understanding how to communicate with your audience. And really the best way to communicate with your audience is by following some best practices. This is a good way to apply to all of them. Your blog needs to be readable. It needs to be simple. It needs to be relatable and shareable. I think those are very important terms when it comes to this chapter, when it comes to anything that you're learning about in blogging, because if it's not those things, then why should somebody read it? And that's the question I always go back to, is for the reader, when you're creating content for somebody, what's in it for them? Why should they care? Is it educational? Is it motivational? Is it funny? What is it that is so good for them? I'm not going to go into detail here. This is the reading test, the test scores, right? There is a mathematical equation behind this, but the idea is that you typically, when you're writing a blog, you want to try to keep it in here between 50 and 70. You're almost never going to be able to get it up above 70. And it's pretty common that people get it below 50. Honestly, I'm usually somewhere between 30 and 50. I've tried really hard to keep it up here. And honestly, too, the other truth here is I think this is a fairly outdated test. I think when I look at, what has fallen under those in these elements here, it's really hard to find something that's above a 70. This was a news article I pulled. I think this was like a 30 or a 40. It was pretty low. And this is just a normal news article. But then this I pulled from a Time for Kids article, and this was, I think, 5th grade reading level. Like, this was written for 3rd graders, and it was ranked a lot higher. So the reading test, reading ease test, whatever, it's not the most accurate anymore. I mean, this was invented many years ago. People have evolved in the way that they read content. Basic best practices with readability. right? Your sentences, keep them to 20 words or less, keep paragraphs short, and no passive voice. Passive voice, in case you are not aware, is when in a sentence, something is done to someone. Active voice, which is what Google and all the others recommend, is that the noun, the person, the actor does the action. So active voice would be, I ran to the store. That would be a bad example. Then on the other hand, or I'll say this to make it easier. Active voice would be, I graded your scores, your quiz scores. Passive voice would be, your quiz scores were graded by me. It's more, passive voice is more wordy. It's a little bit more, I mean, it's a little awkward. When you hear it, it doesn't sound awkward, but when you read it, it can get awkward, especially if there's too much. Not that you need no passive voice, but if you can try to keep your writing concise and active, that is a better way to keep your writing more easily consumed. And that's really a good transition into simplicity, right? You don't want to have the long, drawn out sentences. That's where blogging can get difficult, and that's where blogs fail, is you don't want this stream of consciousness type of writing that you may have learned when you were in 11th or 12th grade, or even in the first couple of years of college. Writing for the web is very much the opposite of what we've been taught for a lot of our lives. And that can be hard to grasp, especially when it comes to starting a blog up front. When I talk about relatability, that is just the types of blogs. When you think about a blog post that you've read, it's probably been one of these things. There's a lot of other ones out there, but these are probably the most common. I tried to keep it to 10, but I know that there's more. And then finally, shareability. This is probably the hardest one to achieve because, who's going to share this? But sometimes it is. You want to think about, okay, if I write something and I'm about to publish it, a lot of times I'll ask, okay, would somebody want to share this with somebody else? Why would somebody share it with somebody else? And is it easy to share it with somebody else? Generally it is. Just copy and paste a link, but making sure you have the social sharing buttons, or maybe a statement that, hey, be sure to share this with other, you want to make sure that you're making it easy for people to share, kind of like these images here. I don't really want to go too far into web design elements. This is user experience, but I do want to just mention the user experience honeycomb. This will be the last slide. There are a lot more slides after this, but I did want to mention, this goes into the whole content development idea that you want people on your website to find your website or the content to be these things. You want it to be valuable, findable, usable, credible, accessible, desirable, useful. It's probably not going to be all those things, but if you can make sure that your content and all of this is all of this or some of this, that's how you create value. That is how you create content that is worth something to somebody. And that is how a blog, which I know a lot of people think may be outdated or not really worth anything these days, that is how a blog can become valuable and worth a lot of money, a lot of revenue, or if nothing else, something enjoyable for somebody who's creating something online. So I will cut it there. I try to keep this short, but hopefully this helps sell you a little bit on blogging. Maybe you're not completely against it. Maybe you are. Maybe it's not that bad. You don't have to be the best writer in the world to be a blogger. You just need to be passionate about a subject, and it's got to have an audience that will help you build a community. So that is all for today. With any questions, please feel free to reach out.